Why intelligent people stay broke? Have you ever met someone who seems incredibly smart? They earned great grades, have an impressive career, can solve complex problems, and yet they are constantly stressed about money. Now think about the opposite. You've probably also seen people who weren't considered the smartest in school, yet somehow they built businesses, accumulated wealth, and seem financially secure. How is that possible? If intelligence is supposed to help us make better decisions, why do so many intelligent people remain broke while others with average intelligence quietly become wealthy? The answer has very little to do with IQ. It has everything to do with psychology. Today we're performing an autopsy on one of the biggest myths in personal finance. The belief that intelligence automatically leads to wealth. By the end of this video, you'll understand why intelligence alone can become a financial liability, and more importantly, how to avoid falling into the same trap. Before we begin, I want you to answer one question in the comments. Do you believe money is mostly about intelligence or mostly about behavior? Just write intelligence or behavior. By the end of this video, you might surprise yourself with your own answer. The first mistake intelligent people make is believing that knowledge automatically changes behavior. This sounds obvious, but it's one of the greatest psychological illusions. Most people assume that once they know the right thing to do, they will naturally do it. But that's not how the human brain works. Think about health. Almost everyone knows that eating too much sugar is unhealthy. Almost everyone knows they should exercise regularly. Almost everyone knows sleep is important. Yet millions ignore that knowledge every single day. Money works exactly the same way. Knowing what to do isn't the difficult part. Doing it consistently is. Behavioral economists have spent decades studying this gap between knowledge and action. They found that humans aren't purely rational creatures. We're emotional, impulsive, and heavily influenced by cognitive biases. That's why someone can explain compound interest perfectly and still never invest. Someone can understand budgeting and still overspend every month. Someone can know the dangers of debt and continue financing a lifestyle they can't afford. Knowledge informs decisions. Behavior determines outcomes. And wealth is the result of thousands of repeated behaviors, not isolated moments of intelligence. Pause for a second and think honestly. Have you ever known exactly what you should do with your money, but still made the opposite decision? If that's happened to you, write "I've been there" in the comments. You're definitely not alone. The second trap is something psychologists call overconfidence. Ironically, the smarter you become in one field, the more likely you are to overestimate your abilities in another. Imagine a brilliant engineer. She designs complex systems every day. Because she's exceptionally skilled, she starts believing that she can easily beat the stock market. She reads a few articles, watches several videos, feels confident, begins making aggressive investments. A year later, she's lost half her portfolio. Not because she wasn't intelligent. Because investing isn't just about intelligence. It's about humility, patience, probability, and emotional control. Overconfidence is dangerous because it reduces curiosity. Instead of asking, "What am I missing?" you begin saying, "I've already figured this out." The market punishes certainty. It rewards discipline. One of history's greatest investors, Warren Buffett, has often emphasized staying within your circle of competence. Not because he's less intelligent than everyone else, but because he understands how dangerous overconfidence can be. The third reason intelligent people stay broke is perfectionism. This one is incredibly common. Highly intelligent individuals often want every decision to be perfect. They research endlessly, compare every option, Read every book, watch every video, analyze every scenario. Months pass, nothing changes. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis. The pursuit of perfect information becomes an excuse to avoid action. Meanwhile, someone with less knowledge starts investing small amounts consistently. 5 years later, the perfectionist is still planning. The beginner has built wealth. Perfection feels productive, but in reality, it often hides fear. Fear of failure, fear of making mistakes, fear of looking foolish. The wealthy understand something different. Progress beats perfection every single time. Here's another question for you. Which one describes you more? I act too quickly, or I overthink everything? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious how many of you recognize this pattern in yourselves. Another invisible trap is identity. Intelligent people often attach their self-worth to being right. That sounds harmless until money gets involved. Successful investing requires admitting mistakes. Successful business requires constant adaptation. Successful wealth building requires changing your mind when new evidence appears. But if your identity depends on always being correct, admitting mistakes feels like losing part of yourself. Instead of selling a bad investment, you defend it. Instead of changing strategies, you double down. Instead of learning, you protect your ego. This is closely related to something psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy. You've already invested time. You've already invested money. So you keep investing even more, not because it's logical, because walking away feels like admitting failure. Wealthy people don't fall in love with decisions. They fall in love with results. Another reason intelligence doesn't guarantee wealth is delayed gratification. You might assume intelligent people naturally think long term. But our brains evolved for immediate rewards. Receiving something today feels emotionally stronger than receiving something larger years from now. That's why credit cards are so powerful. That's why impulse buying feels good. That's why saving feels difficult. Financial success often comes down to winning tiny psychological battles every day. Choosing investment over consumption. Choosing patience over excitement. Choosing consistency over intensity. None of those choices require extraordinary intelligence. They require emotional discipline. Let's perform another financial autopsy. Imagine two friends. Alex has an IQ of 145. Ben has average intelligence. Alex constantly jumps between investment strategies. He wants the highest returns. He chases trends. He changes plans every few months. Ben invests automatically every month into diversified assets. He ignores financial headlines. He rarely checks his portfolio. 10 or 20 years later, who do you think ends up wealthier? For many people, it's Ben. Not because he knew more, because he behaved better. That's the uncomfortable truth about wealth. Behavior compounds, just like money. Another trap intelligent people face is the desire to optimize everything. Optimization sounds smart, but it often becomes procrastination wearing a disguise. People spend weeks comparing savings accounts, months choosing investment platforms, years waiting for the perfect market condition. Meanwhile, inflation quietly erodes purchasing power. The greatest investment opportunity isn't usually the perfect investment. It's simply getting started. This brings us to another powerful psychological force: social comparison. Intelligent people often compare themselves with equally ambitious peers. Someone always earns more. Someone always drives a nicer car. Someone always seems further ahead. Comparison shifts your financial goals from internal satisfaction to external validation. Suddenly, you're buying status instead of freedom. luxury instead of security, appearances instead of assets. The tragedy, many people who look wealthy are financially fragile. Many people who quietly build wealth look surprisingly ordinary. True wealth is often invisible. That's why so many millionaires don't appear wealthy at all. Because wealth isn't what you spend, it's what you keep. Here's something to reflect on. What's one financial habit you've realized is driven more by emotion than logic? Share it below. Reading other people's experiences might help someone else recognize their own blind spot. Perhaps the biggest misconception is believing that income solves financial problems. It doesn't. Without behavioral change, higher income often creates higher expenses. This is known as lifestyle inflation. Every raise becomes a new car. Every promotion becomes a larger house. Every bonus disappears into a more expensive lifestyle. Income rises, wealth doesn't. That's why high-income professionals can still live paycheck to paycheck. Not because they lack intelligence. Because behavior expands to match income. The wealthy often reverse this pattern. Income increases. Lifestyle grows slowly. Investments grow rapidly. Freedom grows quietly. If there's one lesson from today's financial autopsy, it's this. Your financial future isn't determined by how intelligent you are. It's determined by the habits you repeat when nobody is watching. Every budget you follow, every investment you continue, every impulse purchase you resist, every emotional decision you avoid. These small choices shape your financial life far more than raw intelligence ever will.
Before you leave, I'd like you to think about one final question. If your bank account reflected your daily habits instead of your intelligence, what story would it tell? Share your answer in the comments if you're comfortable. Some of the most valuable conversations happen there. And if today's case study changed the way you think about money, subscribe to The Wealth Pathologist.
Every week, we dissect the hidden psychological patterns behind financial success and failure, not to promise quick riches, but to help you recognize the invisible mental traps before they quietly cost you everything. Because the most dangerous financial mistakes are rarely the ones you can see. They are the ones your own mind convinces you aren't mistakes at all.